we drove up the Pan American Highway up to El Salvador. El Salvador had just come out of a war, so there was that going on. And it was really the kind of the birth of the MS-13 Salvatruchas. And I remember when I got into El Salvador, I had friends take me to the Zona Rosa. And, they said, oh yeah, a few short years ago, the guerrillas killed some of our Marines right here at Chili's restaurant. It was a tense situation. A few months ago, I went to an IACP meeting in San Diego, International Association of Chiefs of Police. I actually met some border guards. They leveled with me. I asked them about, what are you seeing coming down the pipeline as far as migrants? And they said, we get at least 350 to 400 people a day. Very sorry for your country. And these are burly, beefy, macho type guys.
What do you think about the Chinese influence on the cartels and how they're setting up fentanyl labs in Mexico?
You know, if there's a buck to be made, you're certainly going to find China in the mix. So I think part of it is business for these people operating on the fringes, and part of it is maybe political, like...
Kenneth Strange Jr., thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's nice to be here.
So, former FBI agent, brushes with cartels, terrorism, all sorts of stuff. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and maybe a preview on your background.
Sure. So I'm I'm a former FBI agent. I worked in the Joint Terrorism Task Force for a few years. I've also worked for the U.S. Agency for International Development in the States and overseas in Latin America. And then finally, I ended up on the southwest border and later California, working for the Department of Justice, Office of Inspector General. I'm a former PI. I was a PI for about 5 years and just hung up my spurs about 6 months ago. And I do background investigations for a federal contractor right now, and I'm writing books. So that's where I am.
Nice. I assume you can't say what the federal contractor is?
No, I'm not supposed to.
Okay, cool. Well, very cool. So when did this book come out?
So the book came out about 6 months ago.
Okay.
And, it's with the History Publishing Company. And kind of interesting because I was led to the publisher by another FBI agent who wrote a book called Unabomber. And so... I got to see him on television. He was, one of these commentators, and I like the guy. He seemed like a very genuine guy, and he was an author. He's an author as well. So I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and the next thing you know, we have a nice relationship.
Wow.
And he says, and I said, hey, by the way, I write books too, and he said, really? Why don't you send me your manuscript? And I did, and he called me back and he said, damn. He said, dude, you can write. And I'm like, yeah, I've been writing all my life.
Yeah.
And he said, do you mind if I show this to my publisher? And I said, no, knock yourself out. And about 2 or 3 days later, I get the call from the publisher, and he says, I want to sign a contract with you, like now. So
wow.
I said, okay.
That means you're doing something right.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Yeah.
So the book's called A Cop's Son, and can you tell everybody a little bit about what you dive into in the book, and then obviously we'll dive into everything else.
Yes, so it's a true crime memoir, and it's basically, I did it because of this legacy. I wanted to create a legacy for my family. People would ask me, what did you do? And so this is what I did. And I remember, after I retired, I was working for a security company in Pasadena, and one of the employees, we went out to lunch, and he said, what did you do? And I told him a little bit, and he said, could you tell me a story? And I'm like, really? Yeah. Okay. I told him the story, and he was like, whoa, wow, you should be writing that in a book. And later I thought about it, and I said to myself, yes, I should be writing a book. So that's what I did.
Tell us the story.
Right. So the book is really divided into three parts because I worked for 3 distinct and distinguished federal agencies. And the first part is working for a Joint Terrorism Task Force called C-10. And this was in Newark, New Jersey. And I wasn't really supposed to get on that squad. In fact, my supervisor was not happy that I come out of Quantico and I'm on this kind of high-octane, high-profile squad. And, he's telling me you should be doing applicant work, just to build up your skills.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, well, I was in the Middle East for a number of years, and, I think that counts for something. So he said, well, you're here anyway, so we'll use you. So I did that for a few years. I got into international terrorism, Middle East terrorism, domestic terrorism as well. Some incredible work that was being done on this squad. It was a very diverse squad, a lot of experience, and we were working stuff from Abu Nidal, PLO, IRA. Jewish Defense League.
What year was this?
This was 1989.
Okay. Okay. You said IRA, so I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So now IRA is and the PLO is a legit organization.
Yeah.
These days. But so that's the first part of the book. The second part is I'm working for the Agency for International Development. It's kind of I'm on a group that works white-collar fraud cases,
Okay.
contract fraud, commodity program fraud, and everything in between.
Okay. So similar to kind of what Tom Simon did?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So, I'm working for that federal agency, and, I'm based in D.C., and then later I'm based in Costa Rica.
Wow.
And
Poor you.
Yeah, poor me. Unfortunately, that office closed after 1 year.
Too much relaxing or what?
Well, no. I mean, the State Department deemed that this country didn't need foreign aid from the United States.
Yeah.
So, they closed our doors, and, I packed my family in the van, and we drove up on the Pan American Highway up to El Salvador.
Wow.
And El Salvador is not Costa Rica.
I was going to say, that's, yeah.
Nice people, great pupusas.
Yeah.
But this El Salvador had just come out of a war,
Right.
so there was that going on. It was really the kind of the birth of the MS-13 Salvatruchas.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that going on. And I remember when I got into El Salvador, I had friends take me to the Zona Rosa in the capital, and they said, "Oh yeah, just a few short years ago, the guerrillas killed some of our Marines right here at Chili's restaurant."
Yeah.
So there, it was a tense situation, a lot of crime there as well. So that's the second part of the book, and then the last part is I end up with the Department of Justice, OIG, or Office of Inspector General, and I'm now in El Paso, Texas, looking out across the fence to Ciudad Juarez,
Yeah.
Mexico. And, I know out there are the, Vicente Carrillo Fuentes cartel. And so I'm working internal affairs, corruption matters, public corruption. And, I'm looking at our gatekeepers and making sure that they're not being bribed or bought. And that was happening with some frequency.
Yeah. Wow. So a question for you. When it comes to 9/11, right, that period of time, where were you working? Where were you working then?
Right. So when 9/11 happened, I was actually, getting on a plane to go to El Paso to San Antonio with a partner, and we were working a FBI public corruption case in Texas, in San Antonio. And then, I remember we got to the airport, and the planes aren't flying. We're looking up at the TV screens, and people are just crying. They're shrieking. They're in disbelief. And I'm looking up saying, "Oh my God, what the heck? I just saw one of the towers come down."
And you're from New York City too.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's for you. It's got to be.
This is unbelievable.
Right.
So, we turned around. We left the airport, went back to the office. My boss had the TV on the whole day. After a few hours, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please go home. Be with your families. It's important that you be with your families." So I just remember that day very, very distinctly. I called my mom, and she was crying.
Yeah.
She was out on Long Island at the time, and it was just so awful. It was terrible.
And what did you think with your counterterrorism background? I mean, this was your expertise from before, right? All pre 9/11. But what were your thoughts when it happened, and knowing that people call it a big intelligence failure? Do you agree with that? Do you think that's what it was?
Yeah, I would have to say it was, and there was information that apparently the CIA had, and they weren't sharing it really with the bureau, with the FBI. So that was a big problem, and there were some agents that were coming out with things and sending them to headquarters, saying, "Hey, there's some people of, some Arab people in our country that are, going for flight lessons.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Not learning how to land.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that. And I think that was the agent out of Arizona, maybe Phoenix, the Phoenix office. And then there was some other things. There was another hijacker, Musawi, had come in a little bit earlier, and then there was a FBI woman that was, ringing the alarm, saying, "Hey, something is coming up," and her memo went to headquarters, and it died there.
Right.
So I think it's a combination of factors. It's like these. When you're doing that type of work, you really have to have some imagination. What can the enemy do to really hurt us? What can you imagine they could do? And so, plus, you're missing some of these lights that are going off. And had the CIA been more sharing, I mean, these people some of them were in the United States for half a year,
right,
a year. So. You just, it's regrettable.
So my question for you is, when people say that they believe that 9/11 was an inside job, and it does seem like there was a lot of very weird things that happened during that timeline, do you believe that? And I know, I mean, I imagine what your answer will be, but what are your thoughts on that when people say that?
I think it's ridiculous, and I've heard it several times. Overseas, it's a conspiracy. The Israelis did it. Huh? What?
Yeah.
Mossad, really? You couldn't keep a secret like that in the government. I've worked for the government for many years, and secrets come out very shortly. So I don't believe it at all. I think what you saw is what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was it Building 7 that kind of fell on its own?
I'm aware of Building 7, but I don't remember it in the scheme of that day.
Okay.
I think it did, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, so now, knowing that there was intelligence failures, and look, the people in intelligence are human beings, right? So human beings make errors. But looking at now where the border is and some of the things that are happening with Chinese nationals, people from Iran, people from all over, as you called OTMs, other than Mexicans, which is what you normally see coming through the border, people from Guatemala, Mexico, El Salvador, places like that. Do you think that we are vulnerable for another 9/11 style attack?
I think we are. I think it's, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And it's, not just terrorism, but it's also gang-related stuff that will overwhelm us as well. And I'll just give you an example. A few months ago, I went to an IACP meeting in San Diego, International Association Chiefs of Police. And I actually met some border guards from another country in South America. And I speak fluent Spanish, so I was able to kind of talk to them, and they leveled with me. I asked them about, what are you seeing coming down the pipeline as far as migrants?
Right.
And they said, Senor, we get at least 350 to 400 people a day, and I'm very sorry for your country.
And this is at
And this is at the IACP meeting in San Diego.
Right.
And this is from border guards, and these are burly, beefy, macho type guys.
Yeah.
And they said, we feel sorry for you, for your country. And I said, well, why? He said, you have criminals that are part of this group, and we can't touch them. We just wave them through, and they're headed your way. And I said, oh, okay. So, I'm not surprised that you do get a criminal element.
Right.
I've heard there's some Venezuelan gangs that are making their way here, and just think about it. If one of these Venezuelan gangs partners with an MS-13, and it becomes like a little organized crime mafia type.
Yeah.
Thing,
right.
Criminals, they flock to other criminals.
Sure.
So all for profit and money. So you have that going on at the border. You have 7 to 10 million migrants coming in, and you have all these border patrol people or customs people, ICE, I guess they call them today, that are spending their time processing instead of investigating, doing due diligence,
right,
working cases. So that's a problem. That's a problem.
Well, they're letting them in and then giving them a court date that's like 5 years out. Like
exactly. And, do they really, I guess maybe half of them don't show up.
right.
What are you going to do to them? They're here.
Well, the ones that are here to do bad things are not going to show up, right? Like,
no, right. They won't. That's right. They'll take advantage of this society.
Right.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit earlier about how you try to prevent terrorism from happening, right? And you had sort of mentioned the concept, I believe, which is war games, right? Where you just try to see like what your enemy would do. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at China, right? China obviously wants to take Taiwan. That's going to be a big hot spot over the next couple years.
Yeah.
And you look at what happened in Ukraine, you look at what's going on in Israel. We're very vulnerable because we're so tied up as a country in all of these different conflicts that really we're proxy in, but we're not actually a part of, supposedly. If you were China and you wanted to take Taiwan, what would you do in a war game scenario from your perspective?
That's a very interesting question. Look, the Chinese are out there. I think they're just waiting for the right time. They're probably looking and now I understand that there are, they have their own little war games out there right off the coast where they send jets out there, kind of tweak the air defense, see what the response is from not only Taiwan but from the United States.
Sure.
And see what they could possibly get away with. I mean, it would be a protracted struggle if they did invade Taiwan. And I'm not sure if it'd be worth it for them globally, for the economies of the world.
When you say that, do you mean like supply chain issues just because China's economy is based off the world buying Chinese product?
Yes, that's one of the reasons. And, their reputation is really ascendant.
Sure.
It's on the rise. And so to do something like that, I think, in world opinion, the eye of world opinion, it takes China back a little bit.
Right.
But I'm concerned about it. I'm worried, and so are the Taiwanese. I had one friend that just former military, and he and his family just picked up and left. And I said, hey, is that anything to do with your neighbor across the straits?
Yeah.
And he said, oh no, I want to get a better education for my children.
They picked up and left Taiwan, or left here?
They left Taiwan.
Yeah.
To another country.
One of our former employees is originally from Taiwan, and he had to go back for military service.
Wow.
They called him back. He's only got to go for 6 months. I think he's actually pretty much done now, but yeah, it was just, it's like, see ya, like, good luck. It's crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, it could happen, and that would be one of the things that would keep me up at night. I went out and I saw director Chris Ray about a year ago at the Reagan Museum over there in Simi Valley, and his major concern, and I'm glad he mentioned it, is China.
Right.
And everything they're doing, from intellectual property theft to hacking, and having sources and spies in the United States, following their own people.
Yeah.
And then you hear these Chinese citizens that kind of come into the country and they wander onto a base with a camera.
Yeah.
Try to get into a base or something like that. I mean, hello.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems obvious.
Yeah, I mean, you had that police station, Chinese police station, shut down in
New York City,
and New York and San Francisco.
That's right. Exactly. So those things are very concerning to me, and I think we have to really pay attention to that before we find ourselves behind the 8 ball.
Sure. So when you say that we're not only vulnerable for a 9/11 style attack, but it's about not if, but when, how would that happen? I know there's a million different ways, but how, I mean, I would believe that there would be either something coming through the border or it would be completely remote.
Yeah. It could be both, like you said. Take a look at what drones can do these days, for bang for the buck.
Yeah.
Drones would be a part of it. I mean, I keep thinking of sarin gas. We had terrorists in Japan that were using some of that. So if they could refine it and become experts with that could be a huge problem as well. There's just so many things that you can do to wreak havoc in the country. So, you got to be prepared. You have to have that imagination. What could they do? Could they do this? Okay, if they can do that, how do we prepare for it? And, a big thing for me was when I was doing that work was getting out into the field and making it happen. And, in my line of work, it was cultivating informants.
Right.
So, and, funny thing, in my office, there was one fella, Strange, you're never going to go anywhere. You're never going to get a promotion. Why? You're always out of the office. You need to sit there, look good, look at the boss.
Yeah.
Make sure that he's seeing you at, doing paperwork. And I'm like, no, it's out in the street.
Yeah, you're out doing the work.
Right. The sources are out there. They know what's going on in these neighborhoods.
Right.
So I love doing that work. So I think to successfully counter what could happen, you better cultivate some good sources.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I like what when I asked you about 9/11, I like what you said about it's very hard for people in the government to keep secrets, and it is. Yeah. But then you look at things like I think it was the Monto Project and some of the nuclear or not Monto Project. What am I thinking? What was the nuclear program that was kept under wraps really well with Oppenheimer?
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Okay. The Manhattan Project. Yeah. Okay. So I mean that kind of stuff didn't leak, right? So did it, or maybe it did?
Well, maybe it did. I mean, certainly there were Russians that were monitoring that thing because they had sources on the inside.
Right.
So people were talking, and money talks, and sometimes people talk even without money.
Yeah.
You go to a bar, and it was a rough day at the two molecules. They collided, just didn't collide right. Are you getting all this?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it could be any number of ways of soliciting that information.
Yeah. Are you familiar with James O'Keefe? Have you heard of this guy?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So, I mean, that just goes to show how vulnerable people are. And I mean, if you guys don't know, James O'Keefe gets into lunches and dinners and fake dates with people who are in the government and gets them to expose information, and he kind of whistleblows on their behalf.
Yes.
And it just blows my mind some of the people that are in positions of power that can obtain a security clearance and then just so loosely give up information.
Yeah. Well, people like to talk. People like to talk about themselves.
That's why I have a podcast.
But you're not going to get everything from me, I'll tell you that much. But seriously, yes, I've seen a few of his clips. It's kind of comic in a way. It's sad in other ways.
Yeah.
And it's amazing in still other ways. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. He followed me on Instagram the other day, and I was like, okay, maybe we're doing something right, or I don't know.
Actually, I know him from LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. Was he trying to reach out to you, or?
I think I wrote to him. I said, hey, I saw some expose you did. Pretty interesting. Nice job.
Yeah.
And, thank you. That type of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, LinkedIn is one of these things where you could,
well, not as many people message on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The amount of Instagram messages that guy receives versus LinkedIn is,
much more.
I guess. Yeah. Well, cool. So tell me some stories about when you were working in global fraud.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I had several different cases. I had a case out of Cairo, Egypt, and with a nexus in the United States and South Carolina. So this was these were commodities that they were trying to purchase. These were companies that were putting in bids to buy commodities and then ship them to Egypt. It was something along those lines. And I remember there was an IRS agent that was working with us, former IRS agent. He moved on, so I inherited his box of files.
Oh, all the paper?
All the paperwork. And he said, check this out. And then he showed me some of the invoices, or actually the pro forma invoices, bids on this contract. And it was for, I think, acrylic yarn. It was a multi-million-dollar project. But it turned out that the bids from the three bidders were all related. There was like two telephone numbers that they shared on, for two of the companies, and then there was a telex number on the third one. So he said, there's something wrong about these bids.
Right.
These are not from, I have a feeling they're all from the same company. And they were. So, I did my due diligence and, with the Secretary of State, and all these corporate documents came in, and it turned out to be three companies that were owned by the same guy.
Got it.
Yeah. So then it becomes a matter of, going over to, each one of these companies, checking them out. One of the companies had an address in L.A., and so I flew out from Washington to Los Angeles, and it was nothing more than just a room, and the janitor said, "You want to see it?" And he kind of popped it open, looked in, and there's nothing going on here.
Yeah.
There was just one desk, and that was it.
Right.
And I asked him who. Oh yeah, this guy comes in maybe once a year. He just opens the door, sits there, picks up the telephone. I don't know what he does, and he leaves. So it wasn't a viable company. And then, during the interview process with another company, I think it was the CFO said, I don't want any trouble. He had a conscience.
Yeah.
He said, but I was told to make these false bids.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So I worked on that. I got a good assistant U.S. attorney out of South Carolina, and we targeted the individual that created these false invoices and was trying to procure the business. And he was a pretty powerful guy, and he was actually an Egyptian, but with a Syrian background. And he had he got the best law firm in D.C. that you could imagine. And I remember sitting down at a table with the defense attorneys and with my assistant U.S. attorney, and then they started talking about, well, our client, he donates a lot of money to the Republican party here in this state. And I could see the assistant U.S. attorney is like, yeah, thank you. I don't want to hear that. Let's talk about fraud here.
Right. That's good.
Yeah. So in the end, this guy who committed the fraud, was I think a 371 title, 18371 conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government. He just wanted to get done with it. So I know his defense attorney said, what do we have to do to get this gone? So my attorney said, plead guilty. An informational type thing. You don't have to go to trial. Plead guilty, pay the fine, and we're done with this.
Right.
So that, but it took some trip. I must have taken half a dozen trips to South Carolina. Right. To do that, and then there was a trip to Egypt as well, because the guy that was behind it, the mastermind behind it, was a multi-millionaire Egyptian guy. But he had some people that talked, and again, you're cultivating witnesses and informants, to know why he did it and how it worked.
Now, were you going undercover and meeting with people with them not knowing, or what is that? Are you going in to get information as a normal person, or?
Well, I go in there with my government credentials, and sometimes it'll be a subpoena if I need a subpoena. I had on the outside, I had a colleague in Cairo. He was working in Cairo with our agency, so he was able to kind of weave in and out of the bad guy, his kind of world. And there were some people that were not happy with him. So he, let's take advantage of those people.
Right.
What do you have to say about that? Oh, well, he's doing this and that and the other. Oh, okay, thank you very much. So you have to be kind of a little bit crafty about these things, a little bit on the sly, if you will, just to get the information that you need.
Did you do undercover work, stakeouts, things like that?
I did and it's excuse me, it's in the book. I did a limited undercover job. And this was with a would-be terrorist. He wanted to kill the president, among other.
The president
of the United States.
Really?
Was, George Bush, the father.
Wow.
At the time. So, excuse me.
So were you international for this, or this was somebody in the States?
This was in the States.
Really?
This was in the States. I think he had, and this was just. This was during the time that Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. Yeah. So there was that going on. Everybody is preparing for war, and then this joker, this clown, he decides he's going to call. And I don't remember if it was the Iraqis or if he called the whoever he called. We managed to intercept it, and so he's offering his services to the Iraqi government. I can do things for you. I can take care of the president and some other politicians. And there were a few other politicians that he named. So all of a sudden, that's in our backyard.
And he was from?
He's from New Jersey. but he's Middle Eastern origin.
Okay.
And not only that, we find out later, he's been a soldier in the U.S. Army.
I was going to ask if he was U.S. military.
U.S. Army. Yeah.
Wow.
So he had the kind of the wherewithal. So we took it very seriously.
Yeah.
And Kevin, on our squad, we had a Secret Service agent. It's not just FBI agents. We had state troopers and a Secret Service agent.
Joint task force.
Joint task force, and that's why it's a joint task force. So we of course we just started hustling around. To identify this person, we're sending out surveillance units to check him out, and we found where he lived, and then he had a like a grocery store in Newark.
And this was in the 80s, right?
This was
90s?
This is 1990.
Okay.
Right around there.
Okay.
And so we identify where he lives and where his business is. And so the next step I offered to the squad, I said, look, let's find out who this joker is. I think I can pull off this limited undercover. And so everybody sat down at the table. What do you propose? I'm a student. I'm a graduate student in Arabic. I'm interested in Arab studies. I was a teacher in Saudi Arabia. Real things, that I could use.
Yeah.
And I'll go into his store and I'll strike up a conversation with him because I have a gregarious background.
Yeah.
Personality. So, and that's what happens. I go in there and I start talking to this guy, and he's like manning the cash register, and we get into this conversation. And of course, I'm
Arabic,
a little bit in Arabic,
okay.
And then that went. I started off in Arabic, and he's like, "Wow, you speak Arabic?" And it was just easy for me because I'm so used to talking with Middle Eastern people,
right?
So I know how it works. And wow, what do you? So he's interested in me. Oh yeah, I was in Saudi Arabia. And so I said, well, now where are you from? Oh, I'm Palestinian. Were you from Jordan? No, I was in Kuwait. My family was in Kuwait. Hey, did you hear what's going on over in the Middle East? So sad. He goes, yeah, those Kuwaitis, I hate them. Saddam, he's a good guy. So I'm kind of, getting all of this. And then I find out he's been in the military.
Right.
Yeah, and that's when I said, "Oh, okay."
And he disclosed all of this in one.
Yeah. That's what I love doing.
Yeah.
And I do it kind of a carefree, but it's I know exactly what I'm searching for.
Right.
So after about 15 to 20 minutes, and of course I'm looking around his store as well to get to see if there's a dartboard of the president. See darts in there.
Just a bunch of grenades just sitting somewhere.
Yeah, the obvious. I finished up with him, and he said, "I really would like to see you again." And I said, "Oh, well, me too. I mean, let's do this. Let's do this." So, and here's where I made a mistake. So, I give him a pseudonym, and then I wrote down my phone number, my real phone number. So I hadn't, come up with a cover story.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of on the fly. So I got all this great information, and now I go back to the squad, and they're like sitting around going, "Wow,
you got to get a new number."
That's great." Well, no, the boss, he just exploded. He said, "What? You gave him your phone number? Oh my God! You've jeopardized this whole case. Could go down the tubes."
Yeah.
So I took my beating like a man.
Right.
And afterward, he said, "Look, let's get your phone number changed." And so anyway, now we knew who he was, and we were able. There was another case agent, so he assumed the case, but I kind of got the case off to a nice start, except for my little faux pas.
Right.
So it worked out, and then they got a real undercover guy in. This was one of the best undercovers I've ever seen in my life.
Really.
And I knew when they got this guy to come in to play with the target, I knew it was all over.
Yeah.
For that guy. So he did such a great job in his undercover role. So in the end, we found out that he made this call, but he really didn't have the wherewithal to do it. I mean, he had a military background, but he had also boasted that he had other people that he could turn to. But again, we had sat on him for close to a year.
Yeah.
And there were no other people.
Right.
So this was just him kind of. I think him really pissed off at the U.S. government and at the Kuwaitis.
Right.
So he did a stupid thing. He made the phone call, and look what happened.
So how long did he go to prison for?
I think he was in prison just a few years, not very long.
Okay.
Like 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy when you think of the intelligence capabilities now versus, that's why I asked about the year, because 1990, you know, you can ping phones probably, you know, but now with these cell phones we have, it's, I mean,
it's another world. I mean, we're running around with beepers and you know, doing work with these stew phones in the back.
Well, if you don't know, Alexa, if you have an Alexa, and I'm sorry for anybody that was listening to this on a TV and their Alexa is now going off because it heard my saying its name, but Alexa will actually make a boo-doo-doo, this little noise, and it actually is a sonar going out.
Yes.
And it's bouncing back and it's picking that up, and it can actually map where you are in your house, and so can your Wi-Fi and all of that stuff. So
it's amazing. It's amazing what they can do these days. And you know, I get a little scared when I'm looking at my computer at the screen and I see that you know, the webcam looking at me. So I'll
put a little tape over it.
Yeah.
Well, we actually bought, all of our employees, we bought these little strips that go over that you can slide a thing over, but it really doesn't matter because you've got phones, you've got, I mean, look, I mean, I've got a security camera from a company called Wise who's in China. I don't know where that data is going. Some Chinese somebody is probably taking in that information, and it's probably going into some sort of predictive analytics or
could be
facial recognition database or something, right? But it's just like the smart TV, I don't know. You never know. Like, but the phones in our pockets is
it's amazing, and we're so vulnerable. I mean, they're great innovations, great inventions, but it comes with a downside. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I want to move along and talk about some cartel stuff, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the current state of the cartel? Because before they were a cartel, but now they're a government. I mean,
so back then, you know, you had the Vicente Carrillo Fuentes organization, or VCFO, was probably your biggest one at that time. The rivals were the AFO, Arellano Felix organization, which is on the other side of here in San Diego, was down in Baja. So those were the big ones at the time, and it's kind of a lot of crossbreeding, and you know, it was Vicente Carrillo, and then it's Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, and they're all kind of related, and they're cousins and their nephews, and I think there's El Chapo he was at the bottom, he was a bottom feeder, but working his way up. These days, I mean, it seems from what I'm following, it seems like all of these cartels kind of broke up and they splintered. You know, it was like the breakup of AT&T.
Yeah,
just all these little, if you would. I mean, you know, you had the Zetas, then you have the Nueva Generación, and you have some remnants of AFO, the Vicente Carrillo Fuentes thing that's gone. It's another name now.
Yeah.
But you know, they still do the same type of business. You know, they still wreak havoc in the United States, pushing fentanyl into us and facilitating human trafficking as well. So it's you know, they're still nefarious.
Well, what do you think about the Chinese influence on the cartels and how they're setting up fentanyl labs in Mexico?
No, it's you know, if there's a buck to be made, you know, you're certainly going to find China in the mix there, and so I think part of it is, you know, it's a business for these people operating on the fringes, and part of it is maybe political. Like you know, right now the United States is really our enemy, economic enemy, and so if you know, if a few 100,000 people die ingesting fentanyl, so be it. You know, it kind of works for their policies.
But do you think that it's more nefarious than that? Do you think that it's, I mean, if you're China and you want to weaken your enemy, you can make them do it to themselves, you know, by feeding them the toxic poisons that will corrupt them.
Right, yeah. I think that's what they're doing right now. And again, you mentioned it, these labs and these, I guess, these materials that they send to the Mexicans to make fentanyl just proves that.
Yeah. I mean, they're literally setting up labs with the cartels. They're sending Chinese chemists to go work there. It's crazy.
You know what's interesting, and I just mentioned this, back to my book, In the last story of the book, when the bad guy, the Border Patrol canine fella, he becomes a fugitive and he goes down to Mexico, and he's hiding in a place in Mexico called Torreon. And as I'm doing research on, I'm trying to imagine what he's doing in this city of Torreon. I did a lot of research into.
And can you real quick, just because we spoke off camera about this, but can you tell the audience about this corrupt Border Patrol agent?
Certainly, yeah. So here was an individual who had, there were a lot of rumors about him. He was a canine handler. He was from the El Paso area. And when I arrived in El Paso, immediately I heard his name mentioned as, this guy was wheeling and dealing with the VCFO in Ciudad Juarez. So, when I took a look at our cases, there had been a number of cases, but we weren't able to make them. I mean, this guy was very crafty, and he was also, he wasn't working with other people, other government people. So it was just him and the cartel in this case. So he was a canine handler, and during the investigation, we find out that he's got his dog. He and his dog are going on the other side, working for the cartel, and having the dog go around and, as they're preparing bundles of marijuana or cocaine, and they're trying to disguise it and disguise the smell, they're using the dog. This is our American dog that they're using, that the cartel's using, and they're using his expertise and this dog, which was a highly decorated dog and had a bounty on its head at one time. But now the dog is working and he are working together. So it was just bizarre. I got to a point where I couldn't make the case because we were so small, and I would have to rely on other agencies. And in the end, I remember sitting down with this guy. I said, and I selected the place where he hung out. I said, let's meet over there and have a beer, at this place.
And you told him you were who you were.
Oh, he knew who
right.
I was.
Okay.
It's a small, El Paso is a city, but it's a small. And in the government, it's even smaller.
Right.
So I just sat down, and I really, I felt, I knew he actually was doing this for like 20, 25, 30 years, something like that.
How do you do that for so long? That's so crazy. I mean, you look at the average criminal, I feel like.
Well, one of the reasons, Kevin, he was able to, he wasn't flash. If you drove by his house, it was very modest.
Yeah.
If you looked at his vehicles, it was a pickup truck. It was an old pickup truck. So he was flying kind of under the radar that way. He wasn't calling excessive attention to himself.
But he's still in a highly surveyed government place doing criminal activities. I mean,
Yeah, but when you're out there at some of these checkpoints, and that's where he would operate. He would operate in some of the loneliest, godforsaken checkpoints. And so it was easy for him to, hey, Tom, I'll take this shift right now. Go catch a few Z's there in the shack. And then, he's handling waving loads through.
That he knows.
Yeah, wink and a nod. Okay, go ahead. And then later they meet in Chili's or some places where they pay him.
Right, right. Yeah, that's
So this guy eventually, when I left, I had to fold my case up, and it was a big regret for me that we couldn't take him down.
Sure.
But the FBI and I had close contacts with the Public Corruption Squad in El Paso. They were good. They got this guy that had worked on. He was a military guy, and he had worked on the insurgency in Iraq. So he was very military-minded, and so that's the way he conducted his cases.
Sure.
And so they were able to kind of put a full court press, and with many more resources, and with some sources who weren't gringos.
Right.
Because that's why I could speak Spanish until the cows come home.
Yeah.
But I couldn't pull off an undercover operation on the border. I'm just I'm a gringo. I'm a güero.
Yeah.
So it's not going to work. So they had some pretty good sources, and eventually, and his life was starting to. His dog died, and he went into a depression.
And this guy was Mexican American, right?
He was a Mexican American.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the dog died. He went into a depression. He was having problems. He was divorced, and then now he's with the cartel's head of the cartel's niece. That's not working out for him as well. So his life is kind of spiraling out of control.
Right.
And so finally they got him. So,
so they killed him? Or?
No, it was a series of, our case, the FBI case, it was kind of a series of buys.
Okay.
And finally they busted him.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. But they busted him in Mexico?
No, they busted him in the States.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So they arrested him, and he is serving, I think, 70 years.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, and the crazy thing to me is this motherfucker had the biggest warning and hey, stop.
Yeah, no, I told him, but how do you stop? Because there's a lifestyle too that he had. By day he's the border patrol, but at night, he puts on the Tony Llama boots and he's got the big hat, the buckle, and he's listening to narco corridas, and he's a big man, with the boots. So maybe that life he enjoyed. Obviously enjoyed it.
You think it was an adrenaline rush?
Oh, I think so for him. Yeah, for him. Yeah, he had an interesting. As I researched him, and this was interesting. He used to run races as a child against horses in the valley there. Yeah, they would pay him, and he. My understanding is he won 1 or 2 races against horses when he was a kid.
Running,
running against the horse in a short distance.
Running, on his feet, not on another horse.
No, on his feet. Yeah, and I found out little things about the person like that. It was very, very interesting.
How did you find that?
Just talking to people.
Yeah, people that knew him.
Yeah, sure. Researching, but and again, he gets arrested by the FBI, and then he bonds out, and now they're going to put him in jail, and he's supposed to go before the judge. He doesn't show up. He splits
to Mexico.
To Mexico.
Yeah,
and that's where he ends up in this place called Torreon.
Right.
And the interesting part about Torreon is, and this was kind of a backstory that I kind of stumbled into, again, doing all this research. I'm trying to figure out, he's got money, he knows, he's got family from, another part of Mexico. How would what places are out there? What's the city look like? So I'm doing all this research. And the backstory is, and it's Chinese, that this is a city that's infamous for the massacre of the Chinese people. It's called La Matanza de los Chinos.
In Mexico?
In Mexico, yeah. Apparently during one of the revolutions in the beginning of the 20th century, and these Chinese are working there on the railroads and other things. And there's a big Chinese community in Torreon. And they decide, because of the prejudice at the time, they massacre like half of the population of Chinese.
When was this? Early 1900s?
Yeah, during the Mexican Revolution.
Wow.
Right around there. And
I did not know that.
I did not know that either. And then on top of that, China sends a gunboat across the ocean to Mexico to, rattle its sabers and say, we don't like this.
Yeah.
And, there's protests, and it got very complicated, the Mexican-Chinese relationship.
I've never heard that. That's crazy.
Yeah, check it out.
I'm going to look into that.
Yeah, check it out. It's interesting. It's in the book.
So I want to circle back to when you became an FBI agent. So you grew up, your father was an NYPD cop, and what led you to the FBI? And, tell me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, my dad was NYPD for 38 years, and, I grew up in this kind of a family with the whole cop motif going on. So I was very comfortable with police. The way I saw things, they were the good guys.
Right.
And, I went to cop barbecues, softball games. They donate me as the right fielder.
Yeah.
Hey, Strange, can your son play right field? We're short of.
Yeah.
Ken, would you play?
Yeah.
So this was kind of my world, when I wasn't going to school and I would see my dad in this role. So I always enjoyed being around police, and I knew, like I said, I knew they were the good guys. And in the back of my mind, I thought, I could see myself as a police officer, serving and protecting people. I think I'd like to do that. But then, my life kind of went in kind of a different direction, and I have to blame my father again, because he got me interested in speaking Spanish. Because he is working in a neighborhood as a cop. He's working in a neighborhood with Hispanic people. So he starts to listen to Spanish records, these vinyl records, 78s, And I said, Dad, what are you doing? He goes, I want to be able to talk with people in their own language.
Right.
So I'm listening to it, and I'm like, wow, I love the way this sounds. It's almost like music to my ear.
Yeah.
So I start practicing with him. This is like in the 7th, 8th grade. And then,
So you started speaking Spanish early.
well, gravitating towards Spanish. So as soon as I got into high school, I said, I want to study Spanish, and I loved it. And then in high school, I took a trip to Spain. And then in college, now it's my major in college, and now I'm in Madrid for a year studying Spanish.
Wow.
So I'm heading, and I want to teach Spanish. So this kind of law enforcement thing is moving away from me, and I'm more directed towards.
But it's still in your DNA.
Yeah, it's still in the DNA. And so, long story short, I'm doing a graduate study in Arizona at the Thunderbird School of Global Management, and who comes to recruit but CIA, FBI. So I went to one of these sessions, and there was an FBI agent who was talking about the bureau and what they do and this and that, and it's pretty interesting. It sounds like something. Yeah, maybe I'd like to do that. So I spoke with him, and he told me, he said, "You're never going to be rich being an FBI agent, but you'll never be poor as well." So that was good to hear.
Yeah.
So he said, we're looking for people that have a overseas business background or business or some overseas experience, people that speak foreign languages. We could get you in through the language program. You speak Spanish. We'll have to test you, and then plus, you speak some basic Arabic. You're taking Arabic studies here at the college as well. So all of those things, he said, we'd like to. Why don't you fill out an application?
Sure.
And that's what I did. Yeah.
Did you think about working for the CIA?
Yes, I did. Yeah. It just didn't turn out. It didn't work out.
Did you apply?
I did.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You could have gone in two completely similar but different directions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that didn't work out, but the bureau came through.
What was it about the CIA that intrigued you?
Oh, just the and maybe spycraft and
movies.
Yeah, pretty much James Bond, things like that. Books, and I'm a voracious reader, so I read a lot of CIA books, FBI books.
Sure.
In the meantime, so
yeah. Did you learn some pretty cool stuff at Quantico?
Well, I learned that I wasn't ready physically for the demands.
Do they find that breaking point for you, huh?
Well, I showed up. Let me put it this way: you have the 2-mile run, so I had practiced only on the 1.5-mile run.
Oh, okay.
So, and I deluded myself. I said, that's just 2 more laps.
Yeah.
Well. When when that gun goes off and everybody's running around the track, and you start losing gas at 1.5, and you still have two laps to go.
It's a long 2 laps,
right?
Especially if it's hot out, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had problems in the beginning with the physical fitness test, and pull-ups were also like my kryptonite. So I had to. And the good thing was, I didn't do very well, so they put me in a remedial class. So I had extra sessions to get stronger, faster, and that's what happened. In addition, at night, sometimes I would sneak out and run the paths at night, and
nice.
I like that. It was a time, it was quiet, and these paths were pretty good, and all of it was. To pass the physical test at the end.
Yeah. Did you learn some pretty good weapon tactics or anything like that?
Well, firearms is a big component of the training. I had never, so I'm not a big gun guy, and the instructor said that's good because you don't have bad habits.
Yeah.
So we'll train you our way.
Sure.
Which was good. We were shooting 38 on the third. 44, I think it was 44. The revolvers. With the speed loader. Mm-hmm. But the shotgun I had never shot before.
Really?
In my life. So I've got the shotgun there, and boom, the kick. I wasn't ready for the kick, and the glasses would go flying.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
That's funny.
So. We were at least 3 times a week, if not more. And one of the weapons that they introduced us to was an I think it was an MP5.
Yeah.
Heckler and Koch. What a beautiful weapon that was. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful weapon. And, I used it once.
Almost no recoil, right?
Exactly.
9mm?
I think it was.
Yeah.
Smooth as silk.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful weapon.
Yeah, those are, and they're automatic?
I think
ones
so.
you guys had?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they let us use the Tommy gun. They
Oh,
brought out
wow.
the Tommy gun once.
Yeah.
You felt like Dick Tracy going around. So that was fun.
Yeah, the MP5 is a cool gun. I'm actually looking at getting a 22 one, just for a little plinker. But
well, I remember, Kevin, that when you graduate, you could go down to the vault, and if you had the money, you could buy weapons.
at the FBI?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And
maybe I should go apply at the FBI.
Well, you got your issue weapon, right?
Yeah.
And your ammunition,
right?
But I remember one fella, he said, "Oh, I'll take that and that." He had a shotgun, and pretty interesting. MP, whatever it was.
Did you train on the M16 at all?
Don't remember.
Or was there any kind of rifle like that? No.
No, I just remember the shotgun.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Very cool. What was your favorite thing about being an FBI agent?
Well, I realized as an FBI agent, when you flash that badge, it has a lot of clout. People pay attention.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite ready for that, but when instantly, I remember the first case I had, and this was kind of an IRA case, the possibility that person that was living in our backyard was
in New York.
This was in New Jersey.
Okay, yeah,
Newark.
A lot of crossover with that in Boston too.
Yeah. So it was ironic because my first case is an IRA case, and I'm.
Can you tell everybody what the IRA was?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So this is the Provisional Irish Republican Army, and they were fighting a war with the British. At the time. It's historical. It goes way back, generations back to Easter Sunday, and way back, turn of the century.
Northern Ireland and
the Troubles. Right?
Yeah, bombing, car bombs, all that stuff.
Mountbatten. Yeah, they bombed him. They killed him. So they were on our list of organizations that were wreaking havoc. And so my first case was, hey, you got this possible IRA guy, go out and talk to him. And I just remember going out there, and he answered the door, and I showed him the creds, and it was like this, just mouth agape. Oh my God. And I realized, okay.
This feels good.
Take that. So, that was interesting. And then the rest of the session, I just remember sitting in his apartment, and I'm going over his questions, and he's just sitting there like this. The body language was just, and normally, you can expect normal people will be a little defensive, a little uptight, and there might be this, but eventually they will relax.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But this guy, for 30, 40 minutes, just rocking back and forth. I know nothing.
Guilty conscious,
I know nothing, yeah. So it also taught me, Kevin, that, we could have suspicions about people, but if you don't have evidence, you've got nothing.
Right.
So that was a big, and was this fellow involved? And I mention it in my book. Maybe he was. Certainly there was something that had triggered him. And I did see on his mantle, he had a mantle, a bunch of books, and there was a book on the Troubles. And I pointed it out to him. And, he said, I know nothing about that, oh, but what's that? Oh, that, a little bit of light reading,
Can you tell people about the Troubles?
This was the perpetual state of, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and during World War I, the Irish we don't want any part of this war. Although Northern Irish, and there was some from the Free State that did join the Allies, but the Germans were actually trying to tap into that whole posture back then in World War I. I think there was an episode where they were actually running arms into Ireland from Germany to kind of fight the British.
Right.
So there was a lot of that. And, even in my own family, I remember my grandparents telling me through their grandparents about the black and tans and how these thugs from Britain, these kind of paramilitary thugs, would come in and beat up people. And, look for IRA supporters. So, I knew that from my family. And I kind of thought, this is kind of ironic that, I'm like 60% Irish and I'm here.
Yeah. Are you Irish and Italian?
Irish, English, and Norwegian.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And so, now the Irish are the enemy here.
Yeah.
The IRA. So
yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Kenneth, where can people get your book?
Yeah. Thanks. So the book is on, the book is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's a hardcover book. And, it's got some great reviews. And in addition, and I was fortunate, Kevin, because I talked to 2 police chiefs who endorsed the book. This would be Ray Kelly from New York and Chief Bratton from Boston and Los Angeles.
Wow.
And they read the book and gave me some nice cover quotes. So,
excellent. Well, Kenneth, where can people find you? If somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in contact?
Yeah, so I have a website, an author website. It's www.kennethstrange.com. So you can find out my contact information there. You can find out about my books. I have another book. It's a far different book from this one.
Yeah,
it's actually
this one.
Yeah, it's actually it's called "It's Your Camino," one couple's 500-mile pilgrimage across Spain. So it's an award-winning, best-selling book. In fact, I looked at the religious travel to see if it was in the top 100.
Yeah,
and it's number 34 in Basque travel in Spain.
Spain, yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'll take it. So it's a popular book. It's a religious travel book, and I actually collaborated with Martin Sheen, the actor,
right?
Since he's a big Camino guy.
Right. So. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Agent Strange, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Thanks.